at lunch today, and she looked at me and said something that immediately created a lot of fear. She said, "Why don't we introduce each other?" You know, and right away things started going through my head like, wow, what should I say? If I say something crazy about her, she could say something crazy about me, or should I be really kind? Should I say all these great things, even if I don't believe them, or if I do believe, or whatever? And then she looked at me and said the three words that just created absolute panic. She said, "You go first." So now all the pressure is on, right?
And that's how it's done.
So I'd like to introduce Ardita Karaj. She is an agile coach, has been for a number of years. But since I've been working with her, I've learned that she is so much more than that. She's an amazing speaker, an amazing communicator and facilitator, and I think she's a great thinker as well.
Wow, now it's hard for me. Can you hear me?
It's hard for you because your microphone is off.
Yes.
See, this was planned. I knew it all along.
Yeah, that's okay. It's hard for me because I was planning to say some bad stuff about him. Now he was nice, so I have to be nice. Okay.
You can go ahead and say the bad stuff. It's true. We know it.
His name is Jeff Morgan, but everyone calls him Cheezy.
True.
So the why, you have no idea how much free wine he has had for people to answer that question. Everyone says, "Oh, why?" He says, "Well, I have to be drunk enough." And he gets free wine and he never says why. But his name is Cheezy. That's how you find him on Twitter as well. He has founded this company called Lean Dog. Is really XP, true XP programming company. They really follow that tradition. It's in their blood, in their culture. And he is still one of the founders, one of the leaders there. Their company is a boat on the lake in Cleveland, so it's quite unique. And they do some really cool stuff we're going to talk about here. What else to say about him? He is on testing, development, agile. He is all around. So when you talk with him, you can throw any question in and he can answer it.
Wow.
He speaks all year around. This year has been slow for him, just 8 conferences. So more or less, this is it.
And so now I get to say something more about her.
No,
So, yes.
No. Am I?
You're muted on that.
Oh, I muted myself? Okay. Let's go there.
So, well, I just wanted to ask one question, though. I noticed that you dyed your hair since we took this picture of us a while ago, and what's up with that?
Just to be special.
I see.
Now you can hear me. Okay, got it. Oh, it's my fault.
Just had to show up.
Yeah, sorry, my fault.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, shall we get started?
Yes.
Okay.
We want to know a little bit more about you. So who are you? And why are you here and not on the other room? Just to get a sense of your expectations, and so we can probably adjust a little bit on our talk.
Well, I threw one theory out at lunch. I don't know if you remember, Ardita. We talked about, with the round tables here, and it's mid-afternoon where that lunch drool starts to set in and you feel tired, right? And if you're in the other room, you had to sit in a chair, and you had to kind of, but here you can always lay your head down on the table. So that's one theory around why you might be here, but why else are you here?
Who is on product management or product, we have one.
Okay, I'm glad you're up front.
How about some others? Like, what is your interest on this?
How many developers are here? Oh yeah, like it. I'm not doing live coding in this talk, sorry about that. But that is one other thing I should have mentioned about
No,
Ardita.
forget it.
Huh?
No, that's okay.
No?
Project managers, do we have? Okay. Okay. So more or less, any people from business? Still just 2 of you? Oh,
Three.
We got
We're growing.
one more. Okay. All right. We'll start. How did we come up with this idea? So the concept of MVP, you've probably heard before. Last year, in November, we took a trip in Europe, 2 of us, and we went through some countries here.
we stopped in France, and then we drove all around to Austria and then Germany, and cut across some countries there. One thing we notice is that everywhere you go, it's beautiful architecture. It's this beautiful art, right? You see these buildings that on every corner, it's a detail, it's an art, it's a little sculpture that is artistic on its own. Forget about the whole building. And what do Agile coaches think about when they travel? How can you do this? Right? How can you come up with this concept of Notre Dame from the beginning? Who thought of that? And I was thinking, it's not possible for someone, a human, to think of Notre Dame to this shape from the beginning. You wake up one morning and you build Notre Dame this shape. It had to be an MVP. It had to be a way that previously was something else and evolved to this one. So we went there inside to Notre Dame, and we were trying to look at a short line to get inside because the lines there are long. And we got inside and we saw this, really exactly what I was hoping to see, the evolution of Notre Dame. Do you know how Notre Dame used to look like? The very first version of Notre Dame? First of all, do you know what year? 1660. Sorry, you knew it.
I know it goes back to 17 centuries ago.
Yeah, 1660.
It didn't have towers.
Uh-huh.
It was much smaller.
Yeah, much smaller. Do you want to see it? That was Notre Dame. It was a monastery. It was functional. There were priests, they were having services, they were having all the functions that a church, a monastery does, right? So what happened? It happened that one of the popes, I think Pope Adrian, don't quote me on this, I'm really bad at history, he came by and he was welcomed and he liked the whole thing and he blessed the place. And based on this, they decided, well, now we have the blessing of the Pope, we can do more, we can build this, right? We can scale. So they decided to grow. And there are pictures online you can see about this, but it goes like this. They started building now on the sides at 1170. 1225, you have the side now already taking shape. You can see it. 1245, you have now the front. And then they start adding on the side more, 1350, and so on and so on. This is around 1780, late, to come to this one. So during all the time, during all these steps, during all these years of evolution, hundreds of years, right? Notre Dame was still functioning. There were priests inside, there were people that were going to pray and did all the services. Was functional, was evolving, was getting bigger and bigger, and it was serving a purpose, while it was getting prettier and prettier. So, if you think moving from there to here, it took like 200 years. This shows you how even a product can evolve. So starting from this, although don't compare building a software with building a building, they are different things, right? But just the thinking behind this is what made us talk about the MVP. How do we now get this thinking into our companies, into our teams, to build this kind of beautiful architectures, this kind of beautiful products? So there are different definitions about MVP. You have probably read different books. There are so many smart people out there that have said in their own words and their own definition what an MVP is. I've got there just some of them. And I wanted to read only the red ones, the words that are highlighted in red. So they're talking about risk, they're talking about analysis, learning, testing, assumptions, not the quickest, not the perfect, a learning, again, risk, a product should not be the only means, a vision, play around. So see the words that they are talking about. They are all focusing on learning, taking risks, making assumptions, testing them, learning quick. So no matter how you look at an MVP, different point of views from different experiences, the whole idea is around these keywords, these red words there. The whys.
So, now I get to talk?
Now is your turn.
Oh, thank God. Yeah, that's permission. So, I mean, we've all seen this picture before. Who actually, I should ask, who has seen this picture before? Yep. So I figured that as much. So the whole idea is not that we build if we're trying to build a car, we start with one wheel, another wheel, then, you know, the idea is that we have something that's working, something that's functioning the whole time, but that we start small, we start with something simple. So here's another model. I like this one a little bit better because I love desserts, okay? So we start with the cupcake. Who thinks starting with a cupcake is a great way to start? Yeah. Okay, good. I think so as well. And we end with a carrot cake. James, do you think ending with a carrot cake is a...
We had Num carrot cake yesterday at Num. Really good.
Really
Highly
good.
recommended.
Yes. So, or we've seen these sort of pictures as well, right? So I think we want to move a little bit beyond that, though.
Do you know the other one, though?
What's that?
Have you ever seen this before? Starting with a dirt road before you build the whole highway. This is a concept. Someone in Europe, in Belgium, started with this. Said, I think it's an anecdote. It's not a real story, but he said someone hired this company to build a highway between city A and city B. And they did it, they looked beautiful, they took the client at the end, they said, look, the road is so smooth, you have gas station on every kilometer and all of that, like all the good things about it. And the client was angry, and they're like, why are you so angry? You took me in the wrong city. Apparently there were 2 cities with the same name in Europe, and they went to the wrong one. So first build a dirt road, make sure you're going to the right place, then build the highway and the gas stations and all of that. That's the story behind this.
So there's a lot of famous stories out there as well. So we know that Apple, when they originally released the iPhone, released it without some functions that now we would think are critical, right? But they were breaking new ground in a lot of ways, and they wanted to get out quickly in front of the customer, in front of the people like me, and see, is this valuable? Is it valuable enough to continue to refine and continue to invest in it?
Zappos is another one, right? They went live, they didn't have one shoe at the store. They did not have even a store or anything. They just had a website with pictures that they took from other shoe stores. And when someone ordered a pair of shoes, they went to the store, bought the shoes, and manually shipped it. He just wanted to prove the theory that people are going to buy shoes from his website. When that came, that made sense, then he started improving on that, and he started investing for more.
So, and they stayed that way until Ardita started to order shoes online from them, and then they couldn't keep up with the volume, so they had to build a real system behind it.
I asked for help, my friends.
So, how many of you use Groupon fairly regularly now? You know how it started? It literally started as a blog with PDF downloads of coupons. So you could go out to this blog and you could download coupons that you could take out and get a discount at different places. Again, they were trying to prove the idea, was there a market for what they were doing? And so they went out with the simplest idea they could possibly think of.
Virgin Airlines, they literally got one airplane, one trip. nothing more. Can we actually move people from one city to the other with one airplane? Can we handle this kind of service? If that proves to be something we can do, then we can add more cities and more airplanes. But they started with only one airplane, one trip. And now they have a lot more.
So I think Dropbox is another good example. I think Eric Rees wrote about this in his book quite a bit. They went live with no software. They had an idea, but they weren't sure if people would even be interested in using it at all. And so instead of investing in building software, they created a small 3-minute video and put up a website and said, if you're interested, put your name here and we'll let you know how it's going. Now, what was in the video was all fake. There was nothing real. It was all faked. But again, they were trying to do the simplest thing that they could possibly do to validate their idea. Would people actually be willing to, put their personal data or whatever on a shared site in this thing called the cloud, which was just sort of, people were just starting to become aware of it, and maybe a lot of folks didn't trust it yet. Would people do this or not?
Yeah.
So they went out with a very, very simple idea.
They got a lot of people subscribing, and boom, let's do this. Looks like there's interest.
Okay. So
Let's move on.
So let's move on.
We're going to show some other examples that you probably haven't heard, and you probably have no other places to know about. Before we get there, the examples that we're going to show, before we get there, we're going to talk a little bit about the M, the V, and the P. So what is about these concepts. So the minimum. You can read there, I really like that expression from Exupery, where it says that really the excellence, the perfection is only when you have nothing more to take. So that is the minimum thinking that we need in mind. We need something that, not about adding, it's about, is there nothing more to take away, but still is functional, is useful, is perfect. And that is what we need to keep in mind when we start building these minimum products. Adding all the test suites and do ATDD right away probably doesn't make sense. It's too much on the engineering to do all of that investment on MVP 1. Save that for later when you have tested the concept that the product is viable, that you have a chance with this product. So on the first one, try to do your best, but without too much investment. Try to do, all you're trying to do is testing your hypothesis, testing your idea that this can be a product. I can really have a chance with this in market. Keep it simple and experimental. Don't put all the whistles there, right? The bells and the whistles, because those add into the time that it gets for you to go to your client, to your customers, and get the feedback. So they're not minimum anymore. They add into that. What is viable? In the sense of, is a Latin word, from the Latin roots of the word capable of living, right? We want to have something that is capable of living. Not it goes there and nobody is interested. We want something that it goes to someone and they like it and they want more of it and they feed it so the product grows, right? So you want something that you can measure it, right? Viability is a measure of product's ability, right? So you would be able to measure it and you would be able to make sure that it is livable, it lives. You don't want to let the minimum win over the viable. So you don't want to do less than it takes to show to a customer that this is a product that you will really like. Just because you want to do minimum doesn't mean that something doesn't need to go in the hands of the customer. It might be something that is really important to show the value of this product. So viability is quite important when it comes in the hands of the customers to be proven. you need that to be able for the customer to experience. You need to stay focused on the market through the business lens. At the beginning, we are trying to see, is this even possible? Is this even something that the market wants? And then later, you're going to see on how we're going to grow on this, how we're going to compete the other products that are probably in market with this. But at the beginning, you only want to see, does this even have a chance? Anything you want to add? No?
No.
Okay. And then at the end, product. We need to keep in mind that the product has a lot of features, a lot of characteristics. So I've put there just some. So features, reliability, performance, durability, all of these. We need to keep a thin slice of all of these. If you see, if they are all in layers, don't do just some. You need a little thin slice vertical of all of them, because from all of them, the customers are going to get a sense of the product, a better sense of your product. Help customers to do something to give value. It is really important that your product is needed to solve someone's problem. Not your problem, someone else's problem. If it doesn't solve a problem for the customer, they're not going to use it. Why would they use it? What's the value? There's no value on that. So keep in mind that you are solving someone's problem. And that is going to be the one that is leading you on deciding on the features and on performance and on all those, that thin slice when we say what we're going to put on this product. I don't know, have you heard before, this sucks. What you put in is what you get, right? What goes in goes out. If you put a little bit more love, you're going to get more love out. So you need to put a little bit of attention into the design, into the UX to get a better feedback from the customers. All right.
So we're going to showcase a couple of real-life projects from my company. A lot of folks know that my company does agile coaching, agile consulting, but not as many people know that we actually have a development studio where we build a lot of products every year. And Ardita's right, we're very much an XP shop. If you go there, you're going to see developers pairing, you're going to see huge TV screens that show our delivery pipelines. You're going to see, test-driven development, acceptance test-driven development, all these practices that we talk about. But there's another side to it as well, which is the whole process of working with the customer to come up with the product and to come up with the MVP. And so we're going to take you on some journeys around some MVPs that how they went and what was discovered and what we learned along the way, just as a couple of real concrete examples in the small. So the first one was, I guess I get to talk about.
Yeah.
So there is a new top-level domain, .realtor. And my company was hired to build all of the software, the back-end software and the UI, the front-end software to kind of support the rollout of this new domain. And so I want to kind of walk you through how we worked with the customer, how we arrived at the MVP, and all of the things that we learned along the way. So first of all, the story was this. There was a hard deadline. Whenever they came to us, there was already a date set when that new domain had to launch. There's no getting around it. This is set in stone. There was the part of what they really wanted to accomplish is they had realtors, not all of whom are real tech savvy, right? Some of whom are nervous about even using computers, but they needed to be able to go out and use this. They needed to have the full experience. So we couldn't say we would not take them through the whole registration process of registering a new domain. They had to be able to complete that. That was the minimum, right? There were a lot of regulations that were out there. There's a lot of rules, for example, around what your domain can be named. You couldn't have curse words in it, for example, or
some special words like the province
that's
or
right.
the city.
Yeah, special words were not allowed to be included, etc. So there were a lot of rules around this. We have no usage of offensive words, so and so and so on. They also knew that day one, whenever they opened this up, there would be this enormous rush, right? Because everyone wants to go out and get their name or whatever it might be, their company's name. So they knew that day one, whenever this launched, that there was going to be huge volume from around the world. Brand new domain, day one. Everybody wants to make sure they get their cheesy realtor or whatever. So the other thing that was really interesting is when they started this is they had a guy who was a very natural for a product owner. He was very excited. He wanted to work very closely with the team, so he was really pumped. So this was kind of how the story started off when they came to us. Okay. So as we started to work through the minimum and we built it, we actually went to production without all of the core functionality. Why? Because we wanted to spend time to focus on the things that really matter, which was the front-end UI for the users to make it simple and easy to use. So some things that were not there, for example, all of the back-end fulfillment was originally done manually. So there was a verification process to make sure that the person who's requesting it actually is a realtor. And that was done manually. So they went live with a lot of manual processes in the back, and they hired people to come in to do this initially. Why? Because of the tight timelines, we needed to spend the time, instead of spending time focusing on these, we needed to focus on the things that really mattered for the end users. Also, we knew that we wouldn't have the need for people to actually renew their domain for some period of time. So, for example, the ability to go out and renew was completely left out. Like I said, the back-end process, the registration was all manual. Also, they decided, let's not really track any analytics or any data from how people are actually using the system with the first release. So, as far as the usability, our UX folks brought in people, some realtors to actually sit down and use the system, and they learned a lot about it. For example, they learned right away that people were entering the wrong data in the wrong fields.
Credit cards.
That's right.
Credit cards are being entered in the name.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
So imagine you'd have your domain with your credit card number,
Yep.
.realtor.
Well, and what happens is the name gets written into the DNS record. And so some people were actually putting their credit card in the name field, and it was getting written into the public DNS record. And so not a good thing. That actually happened after they went live. So we had a lot of us scrambling. So several iterations of working with the user and working it out, how it works. A lot of emphasis was placed on scalability. So a lot of load and performance tests and scalability and soak tests and such.
Because they expected a land rush.
Exactly that. So let's talk about what they learned from this overall experience. First of all, it was a huge success. The launch went amazingly well. There were some significant hiccups, but day one, the land rush came. They had thousands and thousands of concurrent users, but the system, the site held up. So the product owner was just absolutely overwhelmed by the experience. So we actually have a video up on our site where he's talking about how, I was in the driver's seat. I had no one to blame but myself if the product didn't end up well. Every day they were going through talking about, so this is a area where our company focuses a lot on continuous delivery. So we were prioritizing and talking about what's happening every day. So expect unexpected, like she said, people entered the credit card in the wrong data. So we learned some lessons that we really needed the analytics to see what was happening on the site, to see how people were using, because we were discovering some things too late. But we were able to go out, we launched, it was a successful launch with a small subset of the functionality. And over time, we built all the back-end fulfillment and everything else. So it was a great experience.
So that was one. Another one is Mountville, and this is an app, mobile app. You probably have it. I don't know. If you don't have it, go check it out.
Yeah,
it's now that you're going to hear the story about this, it's going to be probably interesting. Two brothers had an idea. They had a technical background, and they were really strong in the concept. They had the technical solution. They just needed some help with, putting it together. So that was their idea.
Drunk
prevent drunk tweets, practically.
Or we'll say embarrassing tweets.
Friday night, Saturday night, you go out, you get drunk, you put some tweets up, and then in the morning you have a facepalm. Right? So how to prevent this and how to save each other, brothers, on doing this, getting embarrassed in public. So this was their idea. And as I said, they had the solution behind an API with a Twitter and everything, and they came and they're like, we want to do this. The business viability was weak. It was only the two of them that needed this, right?
I need it. There'd be three.
He does need it actually sometimes. If you follow him on Twitter, he does put sometimes tweets when he's late on planes and they upgrade him and they give him free wine.
Yes.
And they didn't have enough budget. They were still working, they had the daytime work, and they were just saying, hey, we have some money on the side and we want to try this, but we're really not ready to leave our job, our day job, and really get into this. So we don't have too much money. So what they did, they came and they spoke with Nicole. Nicole is the UX designer. And after talking with them, they started doing some prototyping on paper. Actually, nothing was written, no lines of code yet, just paper. And going through that, so the use cases, the user flow, all of that, they started to realize that they need to pivot. And they needed to pivot and move away from the Twitter and more into the Instagram. Because the Twitter was not the right platform, and the Instagram had more people that were the age that they were aiming to hit on this. After all the discussions that Nicole had to them, they were having a hard time until she asked them, do you want this for yourself or do you want this for customers? Because this is only for you too. Like, do you want to spend $50,000 for an app that only the two of you are going to use, or do you actually want to make money out of this? And that's where it hit them. It is not just for us. We don't want to use this just for us. So after pivoting and after coming with all these ideas, they decided that embarrassing drunk tweets is not a big goal, it's not a big problem to fix.
Not a lot of market for that.
Not a lot of market. What they found out is that probably the same concept could be used for parents to follow their children on Instagram or on Twitter, but starting with Instagram, and see what their kids were posting on Instagram and having as an educational, why did you do that? Was that nice? Right? That is something you posted on social media, is going to be always connected with you. Did you really think that was good? So it was more thought as a tool to use, parents to use to educate their children about social media usage. So you can see the pivoting of the idea here. It moved from drunk tweets to educational. A huge market. Huge market, because now you have a lot of parents that have teenagers that are constantly on social media, and you don't want these kids to embarrass themselves. So it moved into Instagram because there's more kids in Instagram than in Twitter. Forget about Facebook. Only 13 and up are on Facebook, right? So kids don't go on Facebook anymore, so not a right app. And they decided to have this concept, to discuss the concept of the ability to approve or deny posts of the kids. When they did that, they went out and they produced all this. They started at that point when they agreed that, okay, we're going to do this app, and it's going to be for kids on Instagram. They went and they decided, okay, after this is done, and we are talking with some parents that they had as their early adopters, they said, okay, we are adding for you even some new features, right? So the ability to approve and deny posts. And all of a sudden the parents said, no, that was MVP 2. The parents said, no, we don't want that feature. That is not our goal. I don't want to stop my kid from posting something. I want to know that my kid posted something and have a conversation. right? So you had now a different level of parents here. They were saying, I'm not going to be always on Twitter checking my phone if my kid wants to post something and allow them. I want to be able to have a conversation because it's an educational for my child. So they had to remove that on the next MVP. And then what they learned is that they had to, so what I'm saying there, remove the deny post until they understand the users better. So after all these steps, they are learning from each MVP, they are learning more and more about their users. Actually right now, I think at the beginning of the school, they just released the new version that is all about now even teachers being able to talk with parents. Because teachers love parents that are involved in their kids' life. So even a bigger, more market. By this time, the brothers decided to quit their job because now they really want to get focused on this. They have a bigger market. They are really making money out of this, and it's being something that they really want to do. They quit their jobs and they're really now focused on this. So what was the minimum? So the initial prototype was on a paper. They didn't write the code. They didn't have a subscription model at the beginning. There was no necessary. The rollout was to a small number of parents that they give them quick feedback, and then expanded. And they at the beginning did only one platform, so only Instagram and only iPhone, only on iOS. So it was really focused, and now they are expanding on those as well. Viable. The user research and focus groups that they had to do before with a prototype, with a paper. The serious conversation about the viability of the product with the two brothers was kind of difficult to get them to look at the bigger market. And the parents could link with their kids' profile. At the beginning was this concept of parents linking and approve it, right? And then we said just link and see, so you can see not just what your kids are posting, but then also what kids are doing, like a DM, personal messages.
The
so you can see
conversations,
more
the follow-ups.
of that.
Yeah.
So the learning, Twitter filter was not the right app at the beginning, so they had to pivot on that. They moved the embarrassing tweets and moved into the educational, so bigger market. And then they did an A/B testing on the pricing as well. They didn't know at the beginning how to price this, so they had to do some A/B testing on this before they went to market full. And they found out that the parents don't want to command and control their kids. They're there to educate their kids. So those are the users that they wanted to work with. Understand the funding and time commitment. In order for them to quit their job, they had to understand this before, so they could continue with this. So these were the two examples that we had in mind.
So in both cases here, it really was a journey. And in the latter case, where they started was not their mind was not at all where they finished. If they would have developed the initial app without going through these steps and really trying to think about it, without trying to define what's that viable cut, and then they would have spent a lot of money or a lot of time on a product that the two of them and I would be using right now, and that's it. So it really was a journey, and it wasn't a journey to here's my idea. I want to prove my idea is great, but it was a journey of discovery, with an open mind to change and to learn and to go in different directions if that's where you should go. Okay.
That's all nice and good for the small companies, right? But how many of you work on those, and how many work on enterprise?
How many people here work on enterprises?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yep.
So how can we do the MVP on enterprise? Yeah, that's nice and cool, right?
Well, when we think of minimum viable product, we naturally start thinking about lean startup. We think about startups, right? Small companies able to adapt real quickly, right? And that's usually not what we think of when we think of enterprises, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to start to explore how does this idea apply to the enterprise, and how can we use it to shape our thinking to help us deliver better products. And so that's what the remainder of this talk is going to be about. Well, yeah. I might have one or two other crazy ideas to throw in toward the end. But we're going to focus on this a little bit.
I am not aware of those.
Yeah, you'll learn soon enough.
Okay.
Just don't run out when I start, please. I don't want to be up here alone. So we wanted to kind of set a little bit of context around enterprise, because there are some things that are different about the enterprise. We know that. I personally spend a lot of my time coaching in enterprises. And so we thought that what we could do is start to walk through the Agile Manifesto and talk about it a bit, and then talk about maybe how a lot of enterprises have a little bit different slant or a little bit different view of some of these. For example, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, right? But
On enterprise, how can we do that, right? On enterprise, we have processes, we have gates, systems, you have to go through all of them. And we have tools that are pre-decided. Although they don't support collaboration, we have decided on those tools and they're not changing anytime soon, no sir.
And some of those processes are even outside of the team, right? I think James Shore mentioned, the whole process around how do we fund projects, or the money coming in, and that's really difficult to change. Some of the processes around how do we get code from into production itself. So the team could be very agile, but now we have to hand off to another group that's actually has their own process of how they take that finished product, at least we believe it's finished, and gets it to production. So we have to think about these things sometimes. Working software over comprehensive documentation.
But we want really comprehensive documentation for the support team, right? Because they're on the other side of the fence. How are we going to deliver this product? How is the support team going to know what we did? We need to write comprehensive documentation.
Or we need documentation for disaster recovery, or whatever it might be, So there's all these, again, additional processes, additional layers that sometimes come over the team, that yes, as we're building it, we can use lightweight documentation within the team as we're constructing and writing the code and the testing, but there's the rest of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Customer collaboration over contract negotiation.
But what about those third-party vendors that we need to keep them on time, on budget, on schedule, on everything, right? We need to keep a good control on those, otherwise we don't know what we're doing.
And negotiate those contracts, right?
Yes, we negotiate those really in details.
And responding to change over following a plan.
No, we need a plan. How can business make plans without not having a plan?
And when we think about rollouts in a large enterprise, sometimes there is planning that's necessary. How are we going to train all of the users at the various call centers how to use these new features? Or how are we going to, we have marketing components, and so we have to make sure that the marketing components are ready at the time that the software itself is ready. And so there it's not just a matter of pushing something into an app store and being done with it. There's a lot of other concerns that we have in the enterprise. So the question is does the MVP idea or this concept really apply to the enterprise?
What do you guys think?
What do you think?
Yes.
Yes? How many think it does not apply? No? Oh, okay.
There?
Oh, we have one.
One shy one.
So how many of you think it doesn't apply, but you didn't want to raise your hand because you didn't want to be embarrassed? So.
It depends.
Okay.
Are you a contractor?
No.
So the question to me doesn't make sense. Does MVP apply to the enterprise? The answer directly to that question is of course it does. But how realistic is it to bring it into the organisation is probably a more appropriate question.
Okay. So what do you think of that? How realistic is to use MVP mindset in an enterprise?
How realistic? Well, yeah. I think it's easy to start off in small bubbles, but to get enterprise level change, it's not very easy.
All those buts, right?
Because we're talking about culture here. We're not talking about a process. We're not talking about a way of thinking. It's a completely different game.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
It is. It is a mindset, that experimental mindset, right? It doesn't come easy.
But that's the problem. It's not the
But we want to do MVP, right? We want to deliver something quick, something small, valuable, and do it quick.
Don't cough on the microphone. Okay.
So let's put this a little bit on the enterprise context.
Isn't it just a matter of perspective? Enterprise used to take 2 years, and now it takes you 9 months. You're feeling pretty
That's improvement.
Yeah, you're
From
feeling-
2 years to 9 months, yeah.
Whereas if you were a small leader, you can't go 9 months without kind of income. So it's just a
That's an improvement. It's a way to see it. You did a little bit of improvement, but are you stuck now? Is 9 months where we're okay? We are agile now. We're doing 9 months. Fine. Keep working. Yeah. So if we keep thinking like that, and we keep looking at all of this in the enterprise context, there's hope. There's things that we can do. Because enterprise context actually has some things that are in their benefits when you compare it with a lean startup. Lean startups are still trying something new. They don't even know that their product can make it into the market. They don't have customers. They don't have any, they have not validated.
Why don't you push your clicker?
I will. So lean startups, the small companies have not validated yet their hypothesis that this product can make it. But an enterprise, they already have a product. They're not starting from scratch. They already have customers, right? They already have customers that have given them feedback, so they already know what's going on. They have a good sense of the cost. They don't need now to do the A/B test for their pricing strategy, right? They are not in that exploratory mode. They are in exploiting now. They are all about expansion and pivoting on that side. They don't need now early adopters. They don't need to hire early adopters. They already have the users that we said. So they are more in the sustainable mode. When a lean startup company starts, they are in the product viability. They're testing, is my product viable? At this stage, we have proven that. Enterprises have proven that their product is viable. Now they are in the business viability. Can our business be successful with this now? And the problem, though, is that the previous bad code now is a technical debt. We said that we have to be minimum, so sometimes in that first MVP, we don't put all the technical attention to make it right. But now, it is in the hands of the customers. They are using it, now it's technical debt. Now we do need to put attention to excellence. So, when you look at this, all we need to look is at enterprises' benefits and the mindset that we need to work, the mindset that we need to change. So the challenges. So what challenges are you seeing? Let's ask you before we start.
Yeah, I've got plenty to comment on this. So
We only have another half hour. So
really brief. So one of the points that you listed there that previously on
Oops.
yeah, that one. See, one of the things I think that you missed there, in my view, is that enterprises have a reputation to protect, which is different to the startup. So you can be experimental when you're a startup because you can fail. But these enterprises with large products, even increments on those products, they have to maintain their reputation. So it's going to be a constant balance between, well, what's a minimum viable product versus what actually do I need to do because of my stature in the world or who I am as an organisation. So I don't think it's quite as trivial as you just articulated.
So what you're saying about is branding.
Yep.
Are you talking about branding
And,
here?
well, brand is part of it, but also trust with your customers. Yeah, it's another dimension.
Well, depends, because there are enterprises like telcos that we have here, and we are forced to use them, but nobody loves them, right? A small company is in Kitchener, in Ontario, is a small company that is not an enterprise, Fibernetics. Everyone loves them, and they have more customers because they like them. And should I go to Rogers and Bell's? I don't like them. I go to these guys. So even in that case, even enterprises are in a little bit of branding risk.
And realistically, one way, we're going to get into this in some future slides, but I'll just mention this real quickly, is that that protection that they have often isn't served by delivering something that our customers don't like or don't want to use or reject. And so lean startup is actually a way to mitigate that risk. It's a way to spend the minimum we can to go out and actually find out from the users, is this something that they want, something that they'd be willing to pay for, or whatever it is. But I think whenever we get into talking about some of these enterprise patterns, which we're about to do that on the next slide here, you'll see that we're going to actually introduce a couple of different ideas to that. So just yes?
Just a comment. In terms of the context that you've provided, are you speaking more from the term of an enterprise that's iterating and evolving an existing product or maybe product set, rather than, because I can think of like within my business environment, we have many different businesses and we're experimenting with where we may grow our business model. So I look at some of this and I think, well, we have lots of areas where we don't have users, we are starting from scratch, and so that thinking, so the cultural element still does apply, and this isn't, you know, these don't, I still see we need to be thinking about some of these things.
So we're mostly talking about those areas of an enterprise where a product is out there, has proven that it is needed, there's need for it, there's customers.
So you have a business model.
Yes.
You're iterating on that business
Yes.
model and improving on
Yeah.
that. But if you were to move into a new area, you're going to build your business model from scratch.
Yeah.
And use your
And that is a good case. If you already have the mindset, you can start with a new product with the right mindset and use all the MVP and all the lean startup. Yeah. So there are two different contexts, right?
Yeah.
So starting from scratch or having something.
Okay.
So okay, I guess some enterprise challenges you guys already talked. Anything else you want to bring up? No, we can continue.
So we're going to talk about, the next few slides are just about some basic, simple patterns of how we might start to move an enterprise more toward a lean startup mindset or an MVP mindset. And notice how I didn't say that would make them that, but I said move them more toward that mindset. Okay, so the first one we want to talk about is we have a system that's out there now, a legacy system that's out there. Typically, what happens whenever we have that is we plan releases as we're, to either enhance the system or to possibly fix some defects that might be in the system, right? And so what often happens is these releases, we create some sort of a cadence for these, whether it be every 9 months, like you were mentioning, or twice a year, once a year, whatever it might be. We create some cadence, and then it's all about working backwards. We know we have 6 months until the next release. Let's start to work backwards to see how much can we fit into that 6-month period. And let's prioritize to make sure that we get the most highest priority, whether it be defects or new features, into that 6-month window. And by the way, we have to save plenty of time at the end to do all the testing. And that's sort of the typical approach that we see out there with a lot of enterprises. Can you relate to that? Does anyone relate to that at all? Yep. Okay. So one of the things I think toward the end of this talk, you'll see where my flavor and passion are. But one of the things that we've started to do with some enterprises is start to talk about this. Let's find one very high feature, valuable feature, or something that's small that delivers value to the customer. Instead of saying, let's plan out 9 months of work, let's find one small thing that we think is very valuable. And it might be a defect fix, it might be something very small. Let's deliver that to the users and get feedback. In other words, instead of creating these monolithic releases that have lots of things in it that delay the delivery of value, let's take a small step and instead, let's focus on small features. Let's deliver them. Let's monitor. Let's get feedback. Let's pick the next one. Let's understand. So it's all about shortening that release cycle. And we think that this is a nice step just to start to get started toward delivering this mindset. Now you see, we're still not anywhere near delivering what we might call an MVP, but it is a nice stepping stone to get started.
Production support. it's the concept of bringing the feedback quickly back, right? And helping us with where we go next, what is the next step. Sometimes we don't listen to our production support as much as we should. We need to hear them more because they are the ones that hear directly from customers. They are the ones that hear all the pain of the customer. And if we get to bring that into our small releases, then we're going to give more smaller, viable solutions to our customers. So what we can do is bring those defects, brings those issues that we hear, and we adjust to the most important one. We bring the most important one. And slowly, we start, for example, lowering the number of the support calls, or lowering the number of support calls for a certain area, not the whole company support calls. So the more you lower that, the better customer feedback, the better customer satisfaction you have. Deliver to users. So don't just fix it and give it to support, give it to users, because that's where the feedback now, you have a new loop of feedback to get to improve. You see now the real results. And again, repeat. So smaller fixes, the highest, most important, fix it, send it to users, and repeat.
So it's interesting this morning where we were talking about shortening cycle time, the keynote where he said, what was it, cycle time trumps optimization, was shortening cycle time, was that what it was, Philip?
No, it was efficiency versus cycle time.
Yes, yes. And these first two ideas are all about reducing the amount of time, or reducing the cycle time. How long does it take to get something in the hands of the users? And why do you think that's important? Why is it important to get something out quickly? Anyone have an idea? Yeah.
To get feedback.
To get feedback, absolutely. To get feedback. What would we possibly do with feedback? Change.
Improve.
So, how many of you have ever worked on a software project where the goal was to replace an existing system? Anyone? Okay, all right.
We don't like mainframe, let's use old Java. Not really. No, not just that, even other cases.
So I saw a substantial portion of you raised your hand. Has anybody been on one of those projects that didn't go so well? So I personally think that these are very risky projects. As I've worked on some myself as well. And some of the risks that I see again and again is that, the existing system, what does it really do? Often there's not great documentation for it, so as we're building a new system to replace it, we're not quite sure all the nuances of the business rules that exist in the application. Sometimes we miss some things, right? There's also the case where, while as we're replacing it, the business is not happy it's taking so long, and they have all these other enhancements that they want to get. So let's mix the enhancements along with the replacement, and let's get them all going at the same time. And it just continues to spiral downward into something that has the potential to be disastrous. I've seen that disastrous side of it. So one idea that we have is, we've got this old system. See how beautiful it is? And our goal is to build this new system. Well, I think part of what makes that so risky is this very large Big Bang replacement approach, where we're building a new system. We're going to wait until it's all done. We're going to flip the switch. The old one shuts off. The new one turns on. And all of our users are ecstatic with the greatness of this 7-year project, what it's produced. So one of the ideas is, instead of doing that, what if we could find a way to get a new system running at the same time as the old system, and create the illusion, or the appearance, hopefully create the appearance, that it is one system, and start to replace the old system maybe with one business function or one vertical slice at a time. And so I actually worked about 1.5 years on a project where we did this. And it was a system, or a site, that gets tens of millions of users every week on this site. And we were able to slowly replace an old legacy system one business function at a time. And I guarantee you there are people in this room that used that site that had no idea that this was actually occurring. And the interesting thing about it was that we were able to validate that we were doing the right thing. And so this is sort of that whole idea, let's rule it out. And we were also able to enhance the system while we did this. So
You can probably say it was a credit card company. Don't say the name, but it was a credit card company. And this was the site where people were going to check their credit cards.
Yep.
So question, for the new system, do they like significantly change the UI or interface or those things? Because if they do, then the user will notice.
Yeah, so it did, but what we did, well, I don't want to geek out a little bit. I'll tell you what, talk to me after the talk, and I'll explain exactly how that happened. There was some refactoring that we had to do in order to allow them to do that, but we did evolve the UI at the same time, so, okay? I don't want to get into, she'll punish me if I do.
I don't have time. Another way, I'm going to bring an example that I worked on in a company. It is one of the big retail Canadian companies, and this was a supply chain project. They had to change the whole system on how a purchase order was being processed. So right now they had a purchase order that was being sent to a vendor, and then the vendor was taking that, and then it was coming to the port from the vendor, was coming to the port here in Vancouver actually. From Vancouver was going to a train, from the train was going to distribution centers, and from distribution centers was going to the stores. What they said is that we are finding that our distribution centers are not using their inventory space properly because a lot of things were coming and not all the stores were asking the right amount of shipments. So what they said that they wanted to create this concept of a purchase order to be based on the store needs, not by distribution center. Was a huge change on the purchase order system. Now, as probably some of you might have worked on supply chains, there are multiple systems in place. A purchase order touches finance, touches the border, like we had to talk with the customs for all the changes that we had to do with Customs Canada, touches supply chains itself, touches business, touches store, touches a whole bunch of systems. So what we found was when we did a value stream diagram to figure this out, we found 43 systems affected by this change and how we're going to do that. So the initial idea was, okay, let's just make the change on the bigger systems. There were two big ones, the purchase order and handling of the orders. Let's make the change on this one. And then we said, okay, let's go back to Manifesto, to Agile Manifesto. We start with your end in mind, right? We start with what the user wants. So we started looking, instead of all the systems from S1 to S8, we started looking at S8. We started looking at the very end one. What is the end user going to see? And the end user was one of the system analysts in the company because they were the ones that actually handled all the orders. They were the ones that were following where the order was and was in time or not, all of that. So we started with them. And we said, what is the minimum that we can do on the minimum of the systems that we can touch to make the smallest change? So we started doing something like this. We really took care of the end user and a little bit of a couple of other systems, just so we connected them well. We found out a lot of things. We found out from customs that we had to change now the address on the purchase order, because previously the address on purchase order was by the distribution center. Now we needed just one. We had to go and negotiate with vendors on how the shipment was going to be made. We had to create some mock-up systems on how now this new way of purchase order could have been analyzed. So we did, the very first MVP was just touching this. We made sure that the users had their new interface and they could see the new ones, and a couple of systems were on both old world and new world. And then we started adding more on top of this, Sorry, I don't have the slide right now. We didn't do that. We started adding some more system on all of them until the whole chain was covered and everything was automated. On the 4th MVP, we had everything automated. By the 3rd MVP, everything was flowing, but there were still some jobs that were being run manually. And on the 4th, we automated everything. Usually it was expected to be a project that was going to take 3 years. It took 1.5 years. And it was one of the ones that had the highest ROI. The business was really happy with this, and we started seeing value right away. That means that we don't have much time.
Okay. That's our warning signal.
Yes.
So the whole idea around some of these ideas is all about getting something into the hands of the user faster, to start to validate, to start to get feedback, to reduce risk, and to focus on value. So I think we should go on. I'm going to go on, not ask a question.
We did get some of your enterprise challenges.
Yes. So does anybody know what Agile's highest priority is?
Delivering value.
Delivering working software.
That's right. Actually, the manifesto tells us what it is. So this is one of the principles of the Agile Manifesto. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So I heard Jazz Humble's name mentioned a few times today in the opening keynote, and actually James Shore mentioned it or alluded in his book a little bit. And in the DAD conversation, continuous delivery was one of the ideas that he talked about. If you ask Jazz where he came up with the term continuous delivery, it's straight from the manifesto. Here it is. This is where he got that term. So, I want to talk about continuous delivery for just a moment. This is where Ardita is going to allow me to geek out just a little bit. Just a little bit. Okay? So, what is continuous delivery? Here is a definition. I'm not going to read it to you, but I can tell you that the red words are really critical here. Deliver valuable software at any time. Okay, that's sort of the crux of it. So, imagine a world, and yes, even in the enterprise, where I should have some music here, so some John Lennon song comes to mind, but anyway, we'll skip that.
Enterprise.
Should I sing it?
No.
Okay. So imagine a world where a product owner could have an idea today, right? Wow, I've got an idea. And our customers can actually experience that idea tomorrow. And we as a development team can kind of watch and see how they use it, how they interact with it. And if we need to, we can make changes to it or tweak it a little bit the next day. So that's an idea that a lot of small startup companies think about, or a lot of companies drive toward. It's not an idea that typically we think that enterprises can do, and a lot of people believe that enterprises shouldn't do. I want to throw out this idea, is that continuous delivery, is this sort of the ultimate MVP? Because no longer are we really defining now minimum viable products, but what we have is we have a constant fluid flow of new value and constantly, daily almost, readjusting and seeing and interacting and knowing and understanding how our users react with it. You know, we have this idea where I'm not planning something out months from now, or sometimes even weeks from now. Instead, I'm constantly flowing and constantly looking at everything happening and making the value decisions and trade-offs every day. So, sounds pretty far-fetched, doesn't it? I can tell you that that company where we did that system replacement, their software is now going to production every day, every single day. And they're a very large enterprise. In fact, there's over 30 teams on that software development team. So it's not an idea. It's not an idea that can't happen. And so this is the actual space where I spend most of my time these days, is working with companies that are trying to get there. And A lot of companies that a year or two ago thought, I have no business getting there, are all of a sudden realizing that in order to get from, and if you saw James Shore's talk last week, or just before, sorry, in order to get from stage 2 to stage 3, this is something that they probably need. You know, this ability to constantly readjust based on what's valuable now instead of having this long-term planning. So how does this idea work? It seems like it's impossible, doesn't it? But it's actually not impossible. Every time I've gone through and helped companies get to this point, what we've discovered is that in the process, it simplifies so much. So I think there's a few things that are essential to get there. Technical excellence is absolutely a must. We can't go to production if we write buggy software, right? In fact, the goal is to have 0 defects. Or if we have a defect, discover it so fast we can react to it so quickly that nobody even notices. One of the ideas that we have to be able to do as well in this continuous delivery mindset is separate out the idea of delivering code from the idea of delivering features. So all of the code goes to production constantly, continuously. But we all know, especially in large enterprises where you have multiple teams, not every piece of it is ready at the same time. Sometimes we might have, a back-end service that's not quite ready. The front end's ready to go. We don't hold up the front-end software. We continuously deliver it. We have the ability, after it's delivered, to turn it on or off, or to flip it from one version to another version. That's A/B, right? So monitoring the user, how they interact with it, is essential. Trust me, a lot of the public sites that you go to make purchases or to do things, they're watching how you interact with that site. They're watching the clicks. They're watching what happens if the button's here or the button's over here. How does that affect? Because they're getting so good at tweaking and continuously delivering these small updates, you don't realize it, but they're gathering data and using that to help them make even more informed decisions, to continue to prove their hypothesis. So in this notion, it's not about fear, it's about boldness. So we don't fear what happens if we go out and we make a mistake, but instead we have the ability to roll back something in a minute or less. And as I mentioned, I think I mentioned A/B testing. It's quite common in this, once you get to this point where you can push things out multiple times a day or once a day or whatever, it's quite easy to go out with multiple versions, because in the world where we're taking a traditional MVP, we put one version out and we learn from it. And then if we have a second idea, we have to put another version out and we learn from it. And then we could put a third version out. But imagine being able to put all 3 out at the same time.
We don't know what's going on.
So
the whole idea is the lean startup thinking, is that experimental mindset where you learn about something, you build it, you measure it, you learn, you build, you measure. So it is the circle that you have to go, and as quickly as you can go, the faster, as quicker you can get to, quicker you can learn, quicker you can fix, quicker you can build better.
now this is the point where we were going to ask you guys about some of your MVP experiences, but because Ardita talked too much in this talk, we're a little bit out of time. In fact, I think we have like 2 minutes.
We're going to leave some minutes for questions and stuff. Just some things to remember when it comes to the product. Remember that the question to ask is, should we build this? Because we usually go with, can we build this? And then we give a challenge to engineers. The challenge should be, should we build this? And it should be on the business side. Don't create requirements, create questions. If you create requirements, that means that you know. If you create questions, that means you are looking for a problem to solve. And then you don't know what it is. You leave it in the hands of your team to figure it out the best way. Work on the risk as assumptions first. Define that one metric that matters. It is something that who read the book How to Measure Anything. It is one metric that matters is on each MVP you have one metric, and on the next MVP you're going to have another metric. The metric is the one that is going to tell you, is your hypothesis right? Did you make the right assumption? If not, then you need to create another hypothesis. If yes, then you need to create another hypothesis again. So you need to validate constantly. And focus on the complete product, not just features, because, as I said, the customers need to see the product in general and not just one feature very well.
So there's also things to remember for the customer. So as you saw in the couple of simple MVP ideas that we put in place, knowing the customer, knowing what the end user wants is pretty essential. And this is having them close by, running user focus groups. It can help us know as much as we can before we launch. Customer value has to be our priority. So it's not about solving your problem, your drunk tweet problem, but it's about trying to know and understand the customers that you hope to get and what problem are you trying to solve for them. And the other thing is that focus on longevity. Don't focus on something very quick, but focus on building out customers who will stay with your product over the long term.
When you have engaged customers, the revenue will come. The more customers you engage, the more revenue you make. Oh, and the team. Hey, I play. And on the team side, keep in mind, you need a strong team internally to get through this. You're not going to do it all by yourself, right? You need a team that values the continuous integration. You need a team that is always engaged and collaborates, and an open-minded and continuous learner.
I think the open mind is really essential. That learning that are what we originally thought was valuable is not really that valuable is an important skill to have.
Okay, some questions before we close.
I think we're 1 minute over already.
Okay.
If you have any questions afterwards, Ardita will be happy to answer them for you. Me too. And thank you very much, everybody.